This is Sumant, and I'm Director of Product Management. I handle wireless business. I'm actually based out of headquarters. Unfortunately, I'm away, attending virtual. Okay, I'm here going to talk more about FortiLink NAC, which is actually Fortinet's solution to add network access controller into LAN solution as such. So the network access controller solution, which is part of our integrated wireless controller, which is none other than FortiGate. This enhances the security fabric with functionalities like visibility, control, response, etc. So let's get a little deep, dive into what is FortiLink NAC. This particular functionality is native to FortiGate. Okay, while we know basic NAC services are needed in almost any enterprise network, but the NAC has traditionally been a costly add-on to most of the companies. But at Fortinet, this has to be changed, and we have worked towards it to make a change by offering the NAC services built into the system. That is why I've stated it is very native to FortiGate. And it's commonly, all the commonly deployed NAC features are, which are considered into building this functionality into the FortiGate. And it works with all the FortiGate, FortiAP and FortiSwitch models. There is no added cost, and it is easily deployable, as mentioned earlier. It helps admins to implement policies to control the devices and users that have access to the network. So here you can create a NAC policy, and you can detect the device information, such as based on various classifications of the device, based on the user type, username, host name, device OS, etc., and put that particular client into a specific VLAN or apply based on the port settings. So on an overall, you configure NAC policies, and then you apply device detection based on the types, and you define which onboarding VLAN or VLAN it needs to move from a default onboarding VLAN, and then you apply the action based on what the policy is being created. So that is more of how the functionality of network access control with FortiLink is being enhanced, and which is part of our FortiGate solution as such. And in terms of device detection, let's get a little deeper. This device detection as a functionality can be enabled on a FortiGate, which is running on a FortiOS, which monitors your networks and gather information about devices and its parameters like operating system, username, etc., etc. And it also has automatically discover and segment these device based on the classifications like MAC address, IP address, operating system. And all this information is stored into our device inventory. On top of what is being supported as a device detection mechanism, we also have an additional FortiGuard services, which is IoT detection added to it, which improves the capabilities of FortiGate and FortiLink NAC with its fast cloud-hosted subscription services. Maybe most of you are already aware FortiGuard is our cloud-based subscription service, which you can add on to your FortiGate, FortiAP, or any other services which needs IoT detection and other areas of security fundamental. So on top of it, so access layer products like FortiAP, FortiSwitch, query these FortiGuards for FortiGuard services with unique network features for identifying the devices and patterns from the database which we already have from FortiGuard. And it also augments the hundreds of devices that can be identified for the FortiGate via FortiGuard. So these FortiGuard IoT detection capabilities will automatically enable and discover to segment IoT devices based on the FortiGuard's intelligence and enforce appropriate policies based on how the NAC policies are being defined. So in terms of FortiLink NAC, let's talk about two segments here. One is a switch port based and the other is a wireless NAC. We do support in both these scenarios. In switch port NAC, a NAC policy can be specific to the user or a device detected information, such as the OS type, as we talked about. And we can put this particular device or traffic into a specific VLAN, and it can also be done based on a specific port or the entire switch as such. So the NAC feature or a functionality or a policy can be applied based on a specific port of a switch or it can be applied to the entire switch as is overall. And as you all know, maybe FortiGate can manage multiple switches, and multiple switches also through FortiGate you can also manage multiple FortiAPs. So all these can be individually being detected through the ports being connected and within the LAN segment. So this overall improves the user experience in the NAC functionality with the switching under the switching module. And on top of it, we also recently added a NAC segmentation. So this feature is more towards retaining the IP from onboarding IP to an action-based solution. For example, once a policy is detected, and then you're changing the VLAN from one onboarding default VLAN to a newer VLAN, still the IP address will be retained with the switching module. So the other one which we'll talk about, which I'll also be showing in a demo much later, is the wireless NAC. So the wireless NAC is similar functionality which we have on the switching port. This is for onboarding wireless clients into a default VLAN based on multiple aspects like the device properties, the user group, or EMS tags, which is tightly coupled with our FortiClient, and then assign these clients to a specific VLAN. So let's get into some of the screenshots before I get into a demo. FortiSwitch NAC, this is how the left tab on the FortiGate is what we see here. This is the Wi-Fi and switch controller tab. The FortiSwitch NAC policies are created here, as you see, and you apply it to an onboarding VLAN based on how you create it, and you can enable, disable bounce port based on making the config changes. It will bounce the port and reassign the VLANs based on your config changes. And the NAC policies, as I mentioned earlier, can be applied to the entire switch, or you can specify which switches, which ports, etc. And the next one, if you see, this is where we create the NAC VLANs, where you're creating a specific classification to video, voice, or any other VLANs which you create and which you want to apply it based on the onboarding policies. And the next one, FortiSwitch VLANs on top of it to what you have been configuring for NAC policies for the backend. So this is where the NAC policies are created. So you create what are the FortiSwitches, and then the category, you can define a category based on the device or the user. And based on the device, you have a lot of characteristics you can define. It can be MAC address, hardware vendor, etc., family of products, type of the product or operating system, in this case, username. And then you can provide an action based on whether you want to assign it to a VLAN or you want to base it to the overall port settings. For example, the port settings, meaning the port needs to be enabled LLDP or a QoS profile or 802.1x based on the detection criteria. And going further to wireless NAC. So here I'm just showing differentiation between wired and wireless in the sense like switch and wireless. Here we have two clients. If you see on left tab, we have client 1 and client 2 connected wirelessly through to one of our FortiGate. And if you see a highlighted part or a bolded part, matched NAC policy. In this case, client 1 and client 2 are both connected to the same SSID. But in case of client 2, the operating VLAN is changed from the default VLAN 100 to 200. So that is where the NAC policy has been applied. And this is the triggered NAC policy for it to be detected and changed from 100 VLAN to a 200 VLAN. So that is what is shown in this example. And in terms of device properties, like we already seen in multiple slides. So there are a lot of areas which we categorize and do pattern matching in terms of device patterns. So these are all the areas where you can filter the user based on MAC address, hardware vendor, type, operating system, etc. And all these can be created. So this is more of a wireless NAC overall. So if no further questions, probably I'll move to FortiLink NAC demo.
On the device fingerprinting, is it possible to link that to some external database? Or are these just predefined these are the only options we have for device property.
So currently these are the only options exposed, but irrespective of what the product it is, it's not just the Fortinet product line, but we do have a wildcard matrix where you can create a device based on these criteria. But to answer your question, we have a device inventory which I'll show when I do a demo, from where we can classify and add characteristics on a later stage if needed.
Yeah, in addition, Roel, we also, because again, this is running on a next generation firewall, that firewall has a service for IoT device detection that's already native to it. So if you subscribe as just part of your firewall security settings to get those updates, those same updates and information can feed the FortiLink NAC functionality. So we keep that up from a security perspective anyway, and this tool can actually leverage that directly.
Okay.
So that's the FortiNet perform radius. So it doesn't use radius as a authentication protocol and assign the client to the VLAN based on its attribute.
Radius-based authentication. We do 802.1x based on the port settings. So that is part of the radius-based authentication. Okay. So this is a FortiGate. So on the left tab we have Wi-Fi switch controller module. So under this you have the wired and the wireless, which is the wired is being FortiSwitch and the wireless being the Wi-Fi capable things. So in this case, if you see, we have NAC policies. Before that, I would like to show you some of the managed FortiSwitches. In this case, I have a FortiSwitch which is managed by the same FortiGate through a FortiLink, and we create FortiSwitch VLANs based on onboarding VLAN, and if you want to segment it based on the video, voice, or data, then you have the VLAN IDs and the IP addresses based on what you create. And also these ports, all these FortiSwitch ports are connected with a lot of devices. There can be FortiAPs, which is access points, and there can also be some clients directly connected to it. And to get into the NAC policies, which is the network access control, I've here created few of them already. So if you see here, let me show you a new one where you can either say specify the FortiSwitch, how many, whether all or a specific FortiSwitch. Here in this case, we don't have because it's only one FortiSwitch. And in device patterns, you have multiple options. Either you can do it via device, user, or EMS tag. So in terms of user, it is only user group, where you can create the users and assign these user groups to it. And in terms of device, you have multiple characteristics. It can be MAC address, hardware, family of device, etc. And these are all wildcard supported. For example, hardware vendor, you can either do Fortinet or you can do FortiStar, which is a wildcard entry, which will accept. And you can define based on the controller action, which is the switch controller action, whether what VLAN you have to assign, and you can assign from the VLANs which we already created earlier. And the same applies for wireless controller action, where you can, when the client joins an SSID, you can assign a specific SSID's action to be performed once which VLAN it needs to be defined from after the AP client connects to the access point. So I'll go back and show you some of the pre-configured ones where you have all the FortiSwitch being enabled for NAC device, which is hardware vendor set as Fortinet. And I'm saying once it is detected, assign it to a specific VLAN called voice. So if you go back on the same place, if you see that these are the matched devices which we show for all the NAC devices. If you go to the view matched devices, you'll see all the NAC, the devices which are MAC detected through the NAC policy. So in the same way, you can create it for guest groups here. In this case, I have applied the same policy for wireless controller, what action to be performed, what is the VLAN ID assigned for the new set of clients connected to that particular SSID, etc. And going back, you have other options like Mac OS, which you can detect based on what OS it is and assign it to a specific VLAN. So these are some of the things which you can perform on a wired on a switch side. The same thing we also can do, which I talked about, NAC VLAN segmentation. So currently this is disabled, but you can also enable it and define a particular primary interface, the interface at which the data traffic needs to be detected for or pattern matched, and then assign an onboarding VLAN and assign another segmented VLAN like a voice or a video. So in this case, we should not have the DHCP IP address for other two VLANs, onboarding and segment VLAN, because both of these are inherit the DHCP from primary interface. So this is where the concept of when the onboarding happens and the VLAN is different from the default VLAN, then the IP address will not change in case of switching module. So I haven't shown the NAC policy settings in terms of Wi-Fi, because on the Wi-Fi front, it's all creating a policy, creating NAC-based profiles is internal to the CLI. Only possibility here is to show the configuration via this GUI in terms of the NAC policies here, which is a global parameter on the left tab. And to go back to users and device. So this is the device inventory which we are talking about. This is the entire set of devices which has been detected. And if you see here, we classify it based on software OS, hardware vendor, status, and we have all of them being detected based on each of the parameters. So if you have additional parameters which needs to be added, first it needs to be classified here, and only then we can enhance the functionality to add these into our pattern matching criteria.
If you have multiple FortiGates, can I share those NAC policies across those firewalls, or do I have to create a whole new, start from scratch on the other firewall?
So we do have a FortiManager, which does manage all the FortiGates. And if you have multiple FortiGates, you can push FortiGate specific config across multiple FortiGates through FortiManager.
I guess to kind of build on Raul's question, we're seeing a lot of these centrified policy elements kind of pushing out to everything. So is that like, we're building on that, at the core of the FortiManager integration, is that, so that policy, those elements that are used, firewalls, access points, SD-WAN, it's all, I can centralize it all, use a lot of the same terms, reuse the same policies, direct that policy kind of across the entire enterprise, right?
Yes, you're right. So the FortiManager is more of a management and orchestration device, which can support all the scalability which is needed across FortiGates, FortiSwitches, FortiAPs.
There's one question online where someone asked if you can do micro segmentation in a single VLAN, or all their segmentation is based on, or is all the segmentation just based on VLANs?
In terms of user properties, probably as of now, we may not be able to support micro segmentation on a single VLAN, but we do, as I mentioned earlier, on the FortiSwitch side, we do have support for NAC segmentation, which is like, in spite of you being connected to multiple VLANs, your IP is going to be the same. So it's kind of micro segmentation in a way where you have different VLAN groups, but you're getting the IP from the same DHCP server.
I'll also just say we have within the firewall, we're doing a lot of work around microsegmentation. We have some other micro-segmentation things in the works. That's all I will say. But I will definitely encourage you to continue watching for other, say, networking field days where you may hear more, because again, because everything converges on the next generation firewall, things that come to that platform are able to be inherited downstream. Same to some of the management things that Sumanth was talking about. Because I can manage centrally all these next generation firewalls, those FortiGates, that allows me, therefore, when I'm pushing config and handling those templates, I'm effectively handling all the wireless switching, WAN, SD-WAN, et cetera, in that same push. So I have a lot of flexibility there, but I'm actually, again, all I'll say is I'm talking to people internally about when they can get on the client calendar to come talk about some of our other offerings around, specifically around micro-segmentation in the future. So watch this space.